a message to President Biden and his Secretary of State Blinken, who are trying not to give Israel bombs of 2,000 pounds because they don't trust Israel to use them properly. So let me tell you a story about 2003 operation that was called Picking on Mones. It's kind of red puppies that are very popular in the winter in our country. There was a message coming from the intelligence in Gaza to the Shin Bet. Shin Bet is the internal security service. So one of the informer told them that on the 6th of September 2003, 12 of the highest leaders of Hamas in Gaza are going to meet in the house of Dr. Marwan Abuas, who was a lecturer at the Islamic University of Gaza. And among those 12 was Sheikh Ahmed Yassin. He was released from the Israeli prison. He was handicapped on wheelchair. He was paralyzed, half the lower part of his body. There was Muhammad Def. Muhammad Def is still today the chief of staff of the Hamas militants, and Ismail Hania, who is now the leader of the what they call the political branch of Hamas, and he is a billionaire living in Qatar in 6-star hotels. So these three and 9 more were gathering at the house of Dr. Marwan Abuas in the neighborhood of Arimal in Gaza on the 6th of September 2003. Now, before that, Israel hit Salah Shahada, who was an archi-terrorist doing lots of operation against Israel, terrorist operation against Israel, and they used a 2,000 pounds bomb, 1-ton bomb, dropped from the air, and unfortunately, several civilians who lived in a hut near where he was staying were unalived. So there was a criticism in Israel and outside Israel. So they decided next time they will take good care that it's not going to happen again. So on the 6th of September 1903, we realized, the IDF realized through the Shin Bet, through the informant in Gaza, that they're all going to be in a house in Gaza. And that was as the head of the Shin Bet at that time, Avi Dichter, was the biggest blunder of any terrorist organization to have all the leadership of this organization being together in one place at one time. It's an opportunity to cut the snake's head in one blow. So the Air Force was on its way already, also using, or they were loaded with 2,000 libs of bombs, 1-ton bombs. And as they were approaching towards Gaza, the informant who was watching the house said that there is a building nearby, about 20 feet next to this house. It's a pretty tall building where 40 families of civilian Palestinians were living. So in the Air Force, there is a unit which tells you which kind of bomb is going to make what kind of damage. And they say 1-ton bomb is going to hit all those civilians. So immediately the order by the chief of staff and the prime minister was for the Air Force to return, to come back, and not use these bombs. So they decided to use 1/4 of this bomb with another flights of planes. So only 250 kilos, about 600 pounds, I guess, something like that, to hit that building. Now, the informant told them that they are going to meet on the 3rd floor of the house. And this kind of a bomb is not going to hit the civilians nearby. So there was a direct hit on the building. The 3rd floor and the 2nd floor were destroyed. Unfortunately for the IDF, they were meeting on the 1st floor, and they got out unharmed, and they were saved. Well, several of them were targeted and were unalived later on by the IDF, except for Ismail Hania. As I told you, he now lives in luxury in Qatar with his three other leaders who have between them together $11 billion. So this tells you and tells the world that when Israel realized that there are civilians nearby, they simply abort the mission, and at that time it was too much of a big target, so they use a pretty small bomb. 250 is the smallest bomb that airplane can drop on ground, and the result was that all of them were alive and well, and they were able to continue with their horrific terrorist work that led eventually to the 7th of October. Now, let me tell you about Yahya Sinwar, who is the head of the snake in Gaza, the head of Hamas. He is the head of the political part, what is called. Mohammed Def is the head of the military branch. He was in the Israeli prison, and it was found that he had a tumor in his brain. So they took him out of prison into Israeli hospital. He was operated by a Jewish doctor in the Israeli hospital. His life was saved, and later on there was an exchange with one Israeli soldier who was traded for 1,027 terrorists of Hamas, including Yahya Sinwar. So this meant that his life was saved by Israel. Actually, Israel gave him the opportunity without any payment to get a degree at the Israeli university while in correspondence while he was in prison. So this man whose life was saved, he is the one who sent his terrorists to unalive 1,200 Israelis, raped the young girls at the Nova Festival, burned babies in ovens, and other horrific things. That was his way of saying thank you to Israel for saving my life. So this is for Biden and Blinken, who think that you can't trust Israel. Israel is doing better than any other army in the world in the history of war from the beginning till today in saving civilian life. It's not my words. I'm not an expert about it, but I watched a lecture by Professor, he's now retired, Professor John Spencer, who was a professor in West Point in the States, in the United States, for urban warfare. And he said Israel is doing a remarkable results in saving civilian life. So don't listen to me. Whom am I to talk? Just look for Professor John Spencer on YouTube and you hear it with your own ears what he's got to say. I will give you a quick summary of this, what he says. He said that in Mosul, in Iraq, the Marines were fighting about 3,500 ISIS and they wanted to eradicate them. In order to unalive those 3,500 ISIS terrorists, they killed 10,000 civilians. So we are talking about 3 civilians who were unalived to get rid of one terrorist. So this is a ratio to 1 to 3, which is pretty good because the average in this kind of war in urban cities, the average is 9 civilians are unalived to get rid of one terrorist or one fighter who is fighting against you. Now, what is the results in Gaza? It's about 1 to 1, maximum 1.5 to 1. So never in the history of any army in the world, they never achieved such a wonderful result. So instead of saying, Israel, you are the best, the most moral army in the world, they are spewing this bullshit, sorry to tell you, of genocide, genocide, genocide. I mean, first of all, Hamas and the United Nations changed the numbers. B, they forget to include the terrorists who were unalived by the Israeli attacks. This is about 13,000, maybe a bit more. They include in their numbers the people who died naturally from disease or old age, and the average in Gaza, which have more than 2 million people, is about 700 people a month. Natural death, no war, no nothing. They're just old age or disease. So those numbers are coming up to about 4,000 people that are including in the number that they say Israel has killed. So since they've changed the numbers from 33,000 to 21,000, minus 4,000 who are dead by natural causes, 13,000 of Hamas terrorists who were killed during this operation and still are getting killed right now in the operation in Gaza, which started again. Unfortunately, we are losing our soldiers also. Just yesterday, 5 Israeli soldiers were killed during the battles. So we are talking about less, in my opinion, less than 5,000 people dead. So I don't think any reasonable one will say that if you have 2.2 million people and around 5,000 died, that is a genocide. And why these people died? Because they didn't stay in the safe zone. I'm watching the movies, I'm watching the videos by TikTok and YouTube from Gaza, and you see the Air Force and the artillery is bombing, and about a few hundred yards from there are civilians. What are they doing there? They don't know it's dangerous. They got leaflet, they got phone calls, they know exactly where to go. There's an area to the west of Rafah. It's not in Rafah, it's called the Mwasi. And there is humanitarian aid, water, everything they need, medical care, field hospital, it's all in there. So all this nonsense about 5,000 people dead, mainly because they were either stupid or they didn't listen or Hamas forbade them from leaving, this is really ridiculous. I mean, the whole world who said nothing about about half a million Syrians who were unalived during the civil war by the regime of Bashar Assad in Syria, and between 5 to 8 million people fled Syria and moved to Turkey and to Jordan. There's more than 1 million Syrian refugees in Jordan, about 2 3 million refugees from Syria in Turkey, the rest are in Europe. Nobody around the world is saying, whoa, whoa, this is the Nakba of the Syrian people. 8 million Syrians that left Syria, this is a real Nakba. And the Palestinians, they left because they were asked by their armies, 5 armies invaded Israel. They told them, leave, and in 2 weeks we'll get rid of the Jews. You come back not only to your homes, you got the Jewish people's home. And that's what they did. And unfortunately for them, they didn't succeed, and Israel had a victory in 1948, and the Arab armies were pushed back. Now, a word about the result of what is happening right now, which I don't think people are paying enough attention. From Gaza, years ago, there were 70,000 Palestinians, Gazans, who came to work in Israel every day. I mean, we realized there was the Intifada, and I talked to the man who was the governor of Gaza, the Israeli military governor of Gaza at the time. He asked a woman, why do your children are throwing grenades on the Israeli soldier? And she says, we have no money, and for every grenade, they're getting money. So he called the authorities in Israel, and he opened the gates for 70,000 Palestinians to go to Israel and to get, the average or the minimum wage in Israel per person is $1,500. The average salary for the Palestinians is about $200 a month in Gaza, maybe about $300 a month in the West Bank. They don't have, by the way, Social Security, not there and not there, like they have here. So the result of what is happening right now, I don't think anyone in Israel will allow them to come to work in Israel anymore. It was decreased from 70,000 to 20,000 on the 6th of December because we realized that many of these who came to Israel to work were actually uh, either operators doing terrorist attacks or informant of Hamas. And when Hamas invaded brutally into the kibbutzim near Gaza, and most of the members of these kibbutzim were leftists who was supporting Hamas, who were, for instance, there was a famous woman who drove every day almost young children from the passage from Gaza to Israel. She took young kids who had cancer to get cure in Israel because they didn't have these things in Gaza. So what happened? They came to work in Israel. On the 7th of October, somehow they knew exactly where to go, in which house, which family uh, lives, who is the head of the security, because every such kibbutz had a kind of a 10, 12 people who were, in the readiness unit of the members of this kibbutz. They knew exactly where the weapons are, who is the head of the security, and they gave all this information. The sorry ad for the Palestinians, I don't think any citizen of Israel will allow them to come to work again. I don't think anyone in Israel will allow them to come and get free treatment in Israel as they used to get before. I don't think anyone in Israel will allow them to get free electricity and free water from Israel as they did before. Now, the PA, the Palestinian Authority, who also celebrated the 7th of October and blamed Israel for all this nonsense of genocide, the main source of income for the Palestinians in the West Bank is work in Israel. Again, they get about $1,500 a month compared to $300 in the West Bank. They get all the things. Sometimes they get a little much more than that. For instance, if they're working in construction and building, they make much more. I don't think anyone in Israel will allow them to come and work in Israel anymore. How they're going to manage, I don't know. But I don't think any country is taking care of giving work, medical care, and anything else to its enemy. The same, by the way, by humanitarian aid. This is something which is unbelievable. The only country in the world that the world is telling them to allow or facilitate humanitarian aid from its own country to Gaza is Israel. I mean, the United States is not sending any humanitarian aid to the Houthis while they fight them. Russia is not sending any humanitarian aid to Ukraine. Britain didn't send any petrol to Nazi Germany in World War II, and everybody is demanding Israel and blaming Israel for any fault. Oh, some people protested and tried to stop that. Who are the protesters? The families of the hostages who are kept in Hamas tunnels for 7 months. They say, we know that they are almost starving because we had the hostages that were released. They are almost starving. They're giving them a tiny little piece of bread a day, and that's all. While Hamas is stealing the humanitarian aid, and they are well fed. The members of Hamas, not the Gazans, and certainly not our hostages. So the world blame Israel, it's a war crime. I mean, cut it. There's no law, and no other country in the world ever gave anything to its enemy, and probably will never give anything to its enemy. But the world is demanding Israel and blaming Israel for anything that's happening. Aid should come from Egypt, only from Egypt. And if they want to find work after this war, they should ask the Arabs in Egypt or whatever to give them an opportunity to work. They should build their own factories or whatever, because the only factory that they had in Gaza is building tunnels, building rockets, and launching them on Israel. More than 20,000 rockets were launched from Gaza to Israel since 2007 when Hamas took control. And why they don't have to work in real job, why they don't have to build a real industry? Because UNRWA is the one who's giving them everything: money, food, medical care, education, all free of charge, using your tax money. And according to this very strange idea, Palestinians are going to be considered refugees for the next 2 million years. Somebody made a calculation, I guess in about 150 years from now, there will be more Palestinian refugees being fed by UNRWA than the citizens of the United States. So I'm sure one day people will wake up and say, this is unbelievable. And again, I would like to say that in 1948, there were riots against the Jews in all Arab countries, especially when they realized that their marvelous armies failed to destroy Israel in 2 weeks. So they did pogroms on the Jews. What happened? They fled all the Arab countries around that. 800,000 Jews fled Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Egypt, Morocco, Libya, Algeria, everyone. Some countries don't have any more Jews left there, and the total of Jews who left in all these Arab countries were now down from 800,000 to 3,000. But they came to Israel. They didn't ask a kind of an organization like UNRWA to take care of them and their children and their grandchildren for the next 2 million years like UNRWA. They did, they did look back. They didn't call themselves refugees. They said, we are now citizens of Israel. We are going to build Israel. And they build Israel really, really nice. I just want to remind you, or let you know if you don't know, that the Israeli GDP is higher than Germany, is higher than the GDP of England, and higher than the GDP of France. Countries that are much, 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 much bigger than Israel. So a country where 60% of the land is desert. Till recently there was no oil at all. There's still no oil. Now we have nice reserve of gas that we found in the recent 20, 30 years. But in a country which basically had nothing and 60% of it is a real desert, we have built an economy which is better than Germany, the best, most advanced country in Europe. So we didn't look back, oh, we are so poor, we had to leave our homes, we're keeping the keys to our house in Baghdad, in Iraq, and we hope to return there. No, we came to Israel, and that's the end of it. And until the Palestinians realize that is the end of the cycle. I mean, you can try again and again. You are trying, they are trying for 76 years now to destroy Israel. So far, it brought them from one failure to another. This war that you see now in Gaza is number 4 since Hamas took over. Each time a large part of Gaza was destroyed, rebuilt, money from Qatar, money from United States, money from here, money from there, and now it has to be rebuilt again. I just have one question. The 4 leaders of Hamas who live in Qatar, according to what we know, have $11 billion between them. $11 billion between 4 people who are the leaders of this revolutionary resistant movement. Why won't they pay for all this rebuilding of Gaza? They were the ones who ordered this attack. It's their fault that Gaza is destroyed. I think they should open their pockets and rebuild Gaza with the money they stole from the Gazans, money they stole from the humanitarian aid and other tricks that they were using. They should pay for all of it. So this is my opinion. And as I asked you, go and look in YouTube for Professor John Spencer, John Spencer, and he will tell you that the Israeli army is the most moral army in the history of the world. First of all, because we are like that. As I told you at the beginning, we don't bomb uh, terrorists. I mean, even if they are the highest ranking terrorists possible, 12 of them when there are 40 families nearby, and B, because everything we do in this country, the whole world is watching us. Like now, eyes on Rafah, eyes on Rafah. Why don't you look at what is happening in Sudan right now, or in Yemen, where the Houthis killed 350,000 of their own people? And believe me, people are really starving in Yemen. Not my words, it's the United Nations said this is the worst humanitarian problem of our time, Yemen. But you are asking more and more and more and more humanitarian aid, humanitarian aid to the poor Palestinians in Gaza. Everybody take care of the poor Palestinian. When I watched the videos, they didn't look very poor to me. I see nice houses. I mean, there was a video by one of the Israeli reserve unit who was with his unit in a neighborhood. He says, crowded, dense. You see villas that I wish I had such villas. You see 2 story high, 3 story high, one building for one family, a big area between that building and the next villa. They were having good time. I mean, quite a lot of the houses had swimming pool next to them. They used to have five-star hotels in Gaza, restaurant, shopping mall, all in this wonderful open-air prison as those silly people who are talking. So when this war will be over and it will be found out completely that the story of genocide is nonsense, I just hope that some of these, not all of them, I'm sure, will say, we are sorry. We were led by propaganda from Hamas. I mean, who believed numbers of people dead in Gaza? It's a full scale war. The Air Force is bombing, the artillery is shooting, the soldiers are fighting. You think there are Ministry of Health officials walking calmly between those bombs and count the number of dead and know exactly how many children, how many women? Just wake up. It's so unreal. Even the man from the United Nations who said that the numbers are slashed by almost half, he says it's a fog of war. It's mean even they admit this is nonsense, all these numbers. So open your eyes, start thinking for yourself, and don't listen to propaganda and fake news that you get from Hamas always. So this is my message to you. And the last thing I would like to say and finish with that, if you will make Israel to stop, and you already, I mean, the world, the humanitarian, lovely people in the world who stopped Israel from finishing the job for the last reoperation, you will do it now. We will have to face it in 2 years' time. And then it will be the same story. You will ask Israel to stop, and then they will do it 2 or 3 years later because they say they will do it again and again. As I quote, I'm quoting him, the leader of Hamas, 1,000,000 times. You know what gonna be the end of this? Nobody will stay alive in Gaza in the future. So let Israel finish the job now. Israel is going to finish the war. We we don't want to listen to Biden anymore. He is senile. He's not very clever. He's trying to play on both sides. You know, I'm good for Israel. I'm good for my people on the woke left. And you know, when you try to make everybody happy, nobody is happy. So this is what is happening right now. We are going to continue. Hopefully, this will be over. Hopefully, there will be different kind of education in Gaza, different kind of education in the West Bank, and there will be a better future for the Palestinians on for Israel in the future. And those of you who are saying two-state solution, first of all, find one Palestinian who is willing to acknowledge the state of Israel as something that is allowed to be and prosper in the Middle East. The reason there is no two-state solution, because we offer them several times and they said no, is because we need a Palestinian leader from their side who will acknowledge the right of Israel to exist in the ancestor homeland for the last 3,000 years, as it was promised by the Bible, the Old Testament, and also the Quran, which said that this land was given by Allah to the sons of Moses. Who are the sons of Moses? The Jews. Go and find it by yourself in the Quran, and you will realize the Quran itself is not saying this land belongs to the Palestinians. Actually, Palestinians are not mentioned even once in the Quran. It says this land belongs to the Jews. Thank you very much.